Okay, excellent. So I do appreciate that both of you've come here. Essentially, what we're going to be talking about is the possibilities of no code and AI. Okay, so using that to essentially boost your productivity and make it easier for you to work to get done. My goal is not to make you into experts. I really just want to get you acquainted with some of the stuff there, give you some real world examples, and we will set aside. I'm trying to do about 20 or 30 minutes set aside for Q&A, so we can go over your specific questions. But just keep in mind that we're not going to walk out being experts. So it's just kind of to set that seed, put it in your head. Hey, I can use these tools without having to be, a software developer. All right. Now, I am going to put my contact information into the chat. So feel free to copy that and send any questions or to Sharon as well if you have any. All right. This is going to be kind of a relaxed thing. I don't know why that's not showing up in the chat, if anybody can see it.
Yeah, it did.
Okay, perfect. For me, it's blank. All right. So please feel free to ask questions during it. Yes, I've left some time at the end, but if you have a question while we're talking about it, just go ahead and stop me, okay? All right. So just a little bit about myself. My name is William Wade. I'm a software developer, and I've been coding since 1998 after I got out of the Marines. In 2010, I decided to go on my own, and I've been doing software for small businesses, but I've moved towards automation. And kind of some of the stuff that's come from the automation is these no code tools and now, of course, AI. So I kind of find myself in the space of process improvement and software automation. So that's my expertise. Part of that is the desire to educate people. I think one of the biggest problems that I've seen in my clients is they just don't know what they don't know. And a lot of times they don't see a problem as a software problem. So they'll try and either throw people at it or just not do it or continue to do pen and paper or whatever that might be. So that's why I kind of wanted to do this. When Sharon said she'd be willing to host it, I was ecstatic. So yes, I do have a practice. I do sell software automation, but the goal here is to show you the tools and how you can use them. Okay. All right. So let's move on to the next slide. I don't know why. All of a sudden now it's not going to the next slide. And I tried this before we started.
Are you sharing a page or sharing a screen?
I'm sharing the whole screen. So that's why I'm kind of, oops, let's try that again. Let's see if, okay, probably because I'm moving between documents, but it is what it is. All right, so as I said, kind of just quickly, this is the, my evangelism. Why should you care? Why should you want to use these tools? Because automating something even as simple as 15 minutes will save you 65 hours a year. If you automate 2, that's 130. Just think it starts to add up. It's like a snowball effect, and it really eliminates those boring or repetitive tasks. And like I said, it helps you to free your time, get home on time, and help your clients. So kind of what came out of that is I challenge you. So while you're here, to try and think of at least one thing that you can automate. Okay. And the reason for that is I think a lot of people will come, they see the webinar, I talk about what it can do, and they never use it and they never come back to it. But if you try one of these tools, chances are you're going to be incentivized and motivated to keep doing it. So I'm really stressing you really want to take and try and put some of this to use. Okay, so let's talk. Again, every time I touch something else, it seems to just stop this. Oh, I bet that's the answer. Maybe it expects me to be over here. Okay, so we got that figured out. Sorry about that. Okay, so what are some of the no-code applications? What are they? Really, it's nothing more than do-it-yourself software. Okay, so what it essentially does is allow you to write code without writing code. So I know a lot of people out there saying no code means there's no code. Well, it's just hidden behind a better user interface. So there are tools such as Notion, which is a second brain kind of software. It allows you to put different content together. You've got Airtable, which is something we're going to be talking about in our real world examples. It's a lot like a spreadsheet, but it has so many more capabilities. It's also cloud based, so you can reach it from anywhere from a mobile device, so on and so forth. Glide, which allows you to do mobile app development. So essentially, you'd go to a website, put all the pieces on the form, and then you can run it from a phone. Okay, and it's essentially what it is oh, a hybrid app. It's a website that's turned into an app on your phone. That's how it kind of really works. Bubble allows you to make websites without knowing how to do HTML. Card will let you do landing pages. Zapier, which is something that I definitely encourage. We're not going to go through it this time uh, or at the moment, but I would definitely encourage you guys take a look at that, or Power Automate or Make. Those are essentially process automation tools. So it allows you to take two pieces of software that don't necessarily work together and make them work together. So adding something to a Google Sheet could update your CRM, or you could update a spreadsheet from a CRM, so on and so forth. I mean, I've got a client, what they do is every time they put a new client into Capsule CRM, it actually creates that client in their QuickBooks Online, and it also creates a new user in Zendesk, which is their ticket management software. So we can do a lot of stuff like that. JotForm allows you to do form creation, so you can create fairly sophisticated forms, and you don't have to, essentially set up a website. So you can just quickly set up a polling form, something like that. It will put it into a spreadsheet that you could do something else with later. All right. Any questions before I move on? I mean, ultimately, it allows you to do, homegrown apps without having to be someone like me. So kind of what's a weakness of these is that the no code apps still require you to have some technical knowledge. Okay. And you can't just go and, it's like setting up a database in those no code. You still kind of have an idea that, all right, you don't want to repeat data, certain things. Kind of, so how do you get over that? Again, you can't just go and take 30 years of experience and just use that to use the no code. Well, that's where AI kind of comes in. And it essentially is software that mimics human thinking. And what makes it work great with no code is it allows you to be that digital assistant. So those pieces that you don't know about what Sharon and I do, well, that's available through the AI. So you can ask it questions about formulas, or what's best, the best way to set up tables or spreadsheets or any of those kind of things. So it allows you to have that smart assistant that can give you those specific answers, or to kind of give you the deep dive into what that information means. Okay. Now, I do have to add the caveat that AI does hallucinate. That is, it can be very sure about an answer, even if it's completely wrong. It also can give you code that's dangerous. Now, if you see something that looks like an Excel formula, you're probably okay. But if it starts talking about putting API keys and stuff in different locations, you might want to talk to Sharon or I about, hey, is this okay? Generally, you're safe, but be paranoid. Okay. I'm going to take Sharon's advice. You always got to be paranoid. So, anyways, just if it smells wrong or looks wrong, something in that back of your head says, hey, just stop right there and reach out. I'm not a bill per question. So feel free to just email me and say, hey, does this seem right? Okay. All right. So any questions? Again, so we'll be kind of looking at ChatGPT later to kind of show you how you can do that.
Yeah, I mean, I use ChatGPT for Word documents, but just to think that you can do more with it is insane.
Oh yeah. And I'll show you the playground so we can kind of show you a little more about how you can set that up. Okay. And I just said, hey, look, they're better together, which is why we're going to go over them, because it fills in the gaps and gives you that, kind of assistant that you don't have to pay for, other than what you pay OpenAI. And keep in mind too, there are competitors that are coming out that may be better. It's moving so fast. In 3 months, Bard could be the best AI. So just don't get stuck on what I'm using. Which reminds me of a caveat that I want to say here in a second. While we're talking about these real world examples, this isn't all that you can do. There's so much software out there. Technology has gone so far that, what I'm showing you is only just a small piece of it. So if ever in your head you go, there's got to be a better way to do something, if you can't find it on Google, then reach out to me. I probably can point you in the right direction. So don't look at what I'm using here and say, well, that's all that's there or the only way to do it. Just say, what we're trying to really talk about is how can I digitize a process or eliminate these problems I'm having through this software. Okay, so it's more of the mindset, not so much the particular products. So we're going to go over two. One, I'm going to talk about text expander, and then I'm going to talk about Airtable using hotel work orders as kind of a platform for showing you the Airtable tool. So before I stop screen sharing, I just want to know, I'm sorry, not screen, stop the PowerPoint if there's any questions. So now we'll get into something actually we want to talk about is the tools. Okay, so the first one I want to talk about quickly is text expander. I think what makes this a great tool is it allows you to do text snippets in what you're doing. So essentially what happens is text expander sits in it's a Windows program, or if you get a Mac or Linux, whatever, and it's watching your keystrokes. But it has the built-in ability to do, kind of logic, or it allows you to pop up. So instead of having to go to a Google document, copy and paste it, and then go in and replace all these texts, you can set it up with fill-ins or options to create that document just by typing a couple letters. Now, one of the people that couldn't come was an accountant. And so here I have a couple examples that I would show her. Essentially, we have like the employee retention credit. If you're constantly asking questions about something or being asked questions, sorry, you can just type in, RESP-ERC and it'll fill it in. And it will work in any of those programs that you're using as long as it's text-based. Oops, I probably should spell right. And you'll see that it pops all that stuff in. So now type in 6 letters, 7 letters, you've got all that response back and you just send it out to the client. That's the simplest example. Now, there's also, in the case here, we have those options. So if I was to type checkup, so let's just kill that. Oops, I don't know why I put it over here. Let me bring that over the screen. You'll now see where it has those fill-ins. So I can put in their first name, some start dates. But here we have that options. So we could say, hey, up for review. If you uncheck it, it won't show up in the text. So it doesn't really matter. So we'll just cancel. So when you've got a lot of emails or certain things, wrote responses, something like this, and the best part, it's only $8 a month per user. If you pay $12 a month, you can have it within a team and share all those snippets. So one person go write a bunch of snippets and then it's available to everybody in your team. So it's a really inexpensive tool that can allow you to automate a bunch of things. And there's more to it. There's actually, you can use JavaScript to do some coding and calculations. Again, I think that's probably beyond what you want to do, but just realize there is the ability to kind of go beyond the sandbox they're letting you play in. If you've got to do something that's not there in the box, you can use those tools to get that. All right. Any questions?
So you're using the text expander app to type in all your information, but that's linked to your Gmail, and you're just typing in key codes, and it's bringing in from the text expander into your email.
Yeah, and it doesn't have to be just for email. It's actually for any.
No, I'm just
any-
using that because that's what you demonstrated.
Yeah, but you could use it in Word or anything like that. Yep.
Okay.
And in my case, there's also some personal. Oops. So like for name, signature, email, so I just type ZEM, fills in my email address. So little things like that, just when you're always filling out these forms, you can use keystrokes like that to speed it up.
So when you send an email out like that, can you have it manipulate the data when it returns to you?
You'd have to do that through something else. This is
Yeah.
just injecting text, but you could use Zapier to take emails and say, well, if it contains these keywords, do this. One of the things that a lot of people do is, hey, if I get an email from somebody I know, it will take and download the attachments and can put the text from the email into a spreadsheet. So there's any
Gotcha.
number of things. Like I said, there's a lot of stuff you can do. Different ways to go about doing it. But I would not use Text Expander for that. All right. Any other questions? All right. So the next thing is the bigger example. And it's what I created in Airtable. So again, Airtable is really nothing more than kind of a spreadsheet-like app that allows you to develop kind of in-house applications. So in this case, I'm doing it to manage work orders, but I looked at, so on Airtable, if you go there, they have a bunch of different templates. So if you're a local business, you might want a product catalog. And here it has it all set up with the different kind of tables and information. So you can see here's just kind of one of the previews. So again, like I said, I'm going to go over this particular work orders, but as you can see, there's many different types of templates you could use, CRMs, event planning. Dave, for you, it has an inventory management that you could start from.
You're reading my mind.
Yeah, well, reading Sharon's mind. So I didn't want to use that one as an example because I felt it starts to get too much into how you do business. So it was like, well, I don't want to waste your time. I think the work order. The other thing too is that Airtable has a marketplace. So these are other integrations. And I did mention like Text Expander has extensions using JavaScript. Well, there's also scripts that you could use in Airtable. So if there's something that's not in there out of the box, there's all these other tools that you can use to extend it. So that's the nice thing about these no-code tools typically is being able to just kind of put the blocks on. Now I will say the con to no-code tools, why would you want a developer versus a no-coder, is that at some point you two tend to outgrow the software. That is, you don't control the hardware that it's on. So you've got to live within the speed limits that they set. If they charge you per, God, they're using so many different metrics these days, but typically, let's say work unit, it could get expensive, especially if you start having to have 10, 15 different subscriptions. That's where you tend to say, okay, I want to bring this in-house to the developer, and then they take care of it from there. But if you're saying, hey, I need this app we're not doing 1 million transactions a second, there's nothing wrong with these. And from a developer's point of view, some of these are great because you can put your thoughts essentially onto paper so that when it does come time that you need a developer, most of that hard work is done. It's just a matter of making it, translatable to something else. Because the thing is, with no code tools, if they go out of business or it gets too expensive, you can't just pick it up and move it somewhere else. It's in their system. So, you're kind of locked into the vendor. I don't think that that's typically a problem, but, who knows what could happen in 10 years, So just warn you of that sometimes you might have to reevaluate. Okay. Any questions about, the templates or the marketplace? All right. So here's an example that I kind of set up. What I built it around was essentially creating work orders. So you can see here, we've got a work order, kind of got a name created, what units. So essentially I've created another table. And so what happens is these tables are linked together. So as you can see here, you saw that, hey, I've got unit 3 here. Unit 3 has a work order on it. So if you were looking at units, you could say, hey, here's all the work orders for it. Or you could look at the work orders, see where they're at. Or you could see employees and then, hey, what work orders are they working on? Okay, so you have that nice linking between something that would be pretty hard to do in Excel comes right out of the box here. The other thing is that you have essentially these kind of extended cells. So here in this case, it allows you to upload images to go with that work order. So if you've got someone who's kind of the maintenance supervisor, they could go in, take the pictures, upload it, and then assign it to whichever mechanic needs to take care of it. All that stuff's already there with it. Okay. The other nice thing here is you can use formulas in these. So you could put in, hey, how many days has this been has passed since it was created? Or, how many dollars did it take? And then do a summary for all your work orders over the end of the year. Just stuff like that. That could be in here, and then you can use elsewhere in reports, whatever the case, because you can actually use these Airtables as data sources for other programs. I'm not showing you here, but there's a software company, Softer.io, and it allows you to create a website based on these Airtable tables, or bases is what they call it. So you could say, hey, I want a customer facing, functionality, or I want to have something that my employees can log into. So just add some additional functionality that and different ways to view it than you have out of the box here. So again,
What's the name of that again?
Softer, so SOFTR.io. And actually, I should put that in the chat. Just so you can copy it out of there. So, and that's not the only thing. I mean, again, there's other kind of competitors to Airtable that might suit your needs better. So just keep in mind that there's a bunch of other stuff out there. Another one is Smart Suite. And they have a fairly good system. I would say their focus is more on project management. So if you're kind of in that space and want to do something like that, they're a better place to start. All right. The other thing too is you can add. So in the case here, we've got statuses, so we can limit the responses. So hey, it's to do, in progress, done, or on hold. And this is information coming from the employee table. So hey, Jane Doe's doing it. Here's her email. Now, why I've got the email is this. So the nice thing about Airtable is you can now have automations. So this allows us essentially to do stuff to the information either on a schedule, whenever a record's updated. So in this case, I'm saying, hey, whenever a work order gets assigned to someone, it's going to send them an email telling them they've been assigned to that work order. Another was I had an automation that would run nightly that would go and create an event in their Google Calendar. Hey, this work order is due by this date. You can go into their calendar and put that. I didn't finish it here because I don't have a calendar to associate with it that would matter. But the point is, you've got these things you can do. Or let's say that you want to add something as, hey, if someone's going to rent a room before they're supposed to show up, so like 5 days before they show up, send them an email saying, hey, here's things to keep in mind. So it's one of those kind of nice things that you can add to eliminate you having to do it yourself. Another thing that I had done, and this is kind of going back to text expander. So let's say that we're going to just do some refill. And so talking about that kind of power of this. So we could do WO refresh. And so now it kind of puts that text in there. And then I can just go and delete the stuff that doesn't matter. So you can use those two tools together to save you time on creating work orders, especially if you're constantly doing the same things over and over. In the case of running a hotel, there's probably, as soon as someone leaves, there's always something that needs to be done in that room. All right. So kind of any questions on what I'm showing you here? And there's also, I didn't do this because it's kind of, it's always an it depends, but you can add interfaces that you could create dashboards. So if you want to know how many work orders are overdue, you know, counts of, we were talking about that summary of cost. Well, you could look at your costs. So over a period of time, hey, right now we know 67% aren't done and 30% are not are done. So you get an idea of what's outstanding. So the manager can look and see what the the status of all these different work order things are without having to go to the individual tables. And one thing I forgot to mention here is in the data, you can have views. So these are essentially filtered views, looks of what's here. So I said, hey, for a manager, I just want to see what's overdue. Well, here I've set it up saying, hey, anything that's over 30 days old, I want that to be in my face to tell me, hey, I need to get with Mickey Mouse and tell him he needs to take care of that broken side table. Another thing that's here is the Kanban. So for those who love to use, what's the name of that? Jeez, I can't remember the software, but essentially be able to kind of just say, hey, it's broken. Well, it's now in progress. Just that simple.
I'm using ClickUp for basically this right here.
Yep, ClickUp's another good one. I was just trying to think of it's only Kanban. God, I wish, of course, the name is mine. But anyways, but it does that same thing. The similar ability to just kind of move stuff around. Okay, and then you can see there's other things like timelines, lists, Gantt charts, galleries. So there's a lot of stuff that's available there. All right, so the last thing, so we'll skip off that and we'll kind of go to the AI as I kind of promised. So what I did now, I believe you have to have a OpenAI account, one of the professional accounts to do this, but I like this a little better because it will not train their model off what you type in here. So if you go to a regular chat, it uses your questions and its responses to train the model. So if you want to type something here that's proprietary, you'll want to do it here through the playground, or you'll want to pay for that, that upgraded account. But what I've done is I said, hey, I want this to be an Airtable assistant. I'm saying, hey, you're an expert. So that's how it's going to respond to you. And one of the things I did in one of the other tables is I want to concatenate two dates in an email to say, hey, from this to this. So we just tell it, I keep misspelling concatenate. We hit the old run. Now I'm using the GPT 3.5 because it's a lot faster than 4. But 4 gives you, it gave me a better response last time. But the nice thing, again, like ChatGPT, is it remembers kind of what you've said previously. All right, so you see here, this is the formula that would want to set that as. So you could go and try that in Airtable. So you didn't have to know its syntax to do that. And I don't want to take a chance with that. So kind of being able to take AI and just put your questions to it. Hey, I'm using Airtable and I would like to have, I don't know, anybody have a question they would ask or something they're looking for, we could ask it. So
I mean, for me, it would be more like, hey, what is due within the month of January, we'll say. If I've created like table tasks, so I could just isolate those without going through each and every one and putting it on a timeline.
Yep. Let's go back actually, I don't know why I'm in there. I believe we would just use, you could just use the
You use the
timeline.
timeliner.
Yeah, you'd have to pay for that. Sorry. You have to pay for a higher account, but you would essentially say, hey, do this. Or in this case, we might do another grid and just say this month's would help. And then in here, we could go to the filter and just add that condition.
Okay.
So, if it this month. But we would ask it. Yeah, we could really just ask it right now. See what it says. Yeah, and again, that's why I try to be somewhat vague is, yeah. So here we have all the steps you would go about doing that.
I look at this where I would have to hand type this out to show somebody that's not computer savvy how to find and change their web page to look like this.
Well, in this case, I mean, you could just copy and paste this particular, so
Yeah.
you know, but ideally the way you could set up the filter in such a way that they wouldn't need to change it. It would automatically move with the months. So that they wouldn't have to do that. So, yeah, I mean, it's one of those things where it depends on, well, ultimately it always is, as Sharon and I always tell people, it depends on what you're trying to achieve. If you didn't want them messing with it because they're not quite as tech savvy as you, then I would have a rolling filter. And I think this would do that because it just says, hey, making sure that they're in the same month and of course, and the same year. Hopefully that makes sense.
Could you apply it to make a view of the data?
No, right. So we'd go into that filter and we'd say, okay, we would use that formula here, say, hey, only show it in this view that way. All right. So that's kind of the quick examples. Again, I really wanted to spend more time kind of going to the specific examples you might have. And we've got about 25 minutes, which is what I was hoping for, to kind of dig down on stuff that matters to you. You know, what are those questions and what questions you have so I can show them to you.
I mean, for me in my world, it's, I understand, like I said earlier, I understand AI on or the text part of
Yep.
it. Like type something up, hey, can you help me reword this? I'm getting to the point where now I'm asking it, telling it, I'm trying to write this up. Can you please give me a template? And
Yep.
it's taken a lot of work, taking a lot of time out of my hands, right? Takes 30 seconds for them to spit something out versus me spending 2 or 3 hours typing something up. So it's extremely helpful, and it is, but just to see it being used in an application on like work orders and sheets is like a whole nother level.
Yeah, and one of the things that Sharon and I were looking at, we cut it out because it's just time, but we were creating formulas in Excel, or it'll write VBA code if you needed it, or for Google Sheets, G Suite, the app script. Sorry, it's the right name. So there's a lot more to it that you can use it for. I use Copilot, GitHub Copilot to help me code. It'll write huge swaths of code for me. So a lot of this boilerplate stuff, because it actually reads my code and then knows, well, if you're creating a car has wheels and speed. And so it knows those properties exist. And then it can suggest code to me when I'm trying to do something. It says, oh, you're trying to do this? Well, this is what you want. And it's usually good about 90% of the time. Again, I wouldn't use it to write a complete program, but it can give you those little bits and pieces you need to speed you up. Same thing with templates. There's another thing that you can use it for. You can use it to extract data from text. So if somebody sends you an email that has, let's say it's a standardized email. So you always get it from a website and it has name, email, or request information. You could say, hey, go into this email, get me the person's name, get me their email, and then what are they asking for? And then that could put it somewhere for you to look at. So instead of you having to read it, it could pull that out. And then you might have it to create a ticket. It might be, hey, we've got an internal ticket system, or we've got a spreadsheet that people look at and update it, or it's an order. Well, you could have it create an order potentially. Though it again goes back to, it depends. You've got to have the systems in place or the stuff that needs that or can take that. But there's a lot of stuff you can do with the AI, especially with templates. And now one of the things that is coming out is training your data. So you can create your own GPT that's specific. So for Dave, for you, you might train it on CAD information. So, hey, I want to be able to do certain things with CAD. I train it on it. The only problem is right now, somebody can kind of interrogate your GPT to steal any proprietary information. So I would not suggest using these GPTs for anything but common knowledge at the moment. That'll improve, but at the moment, but that's again having a very specific assistant to do stuff for you. There's also plugins you could use with GPT, the regular one, that can do stuff for you. So you could have it do diagrams. Hey, here's a list of the organizational chart. I want you to create a diagram from it, and it could do that. It can send out emails based on stuff that you've done. But just be careful that you don't hook something up that, you don't want to give it access to your bank account. Okay, I would be against that right now. Because you
That
can't.
makes sense.
But, again, like you said, I think the greatest part of AI is that ability to get over that blank page. You can get something started and then you add your life to it, or you ask those questions of it. For Scott, I believe you run the hotels. You
Own a
might.
hotel and.
Yep.
Actually, this is kind of a specific thing to
Yep.
my industry. So I've got a condo hotel. So we rent the units out for the individual owners. At the end of every month, I've got to process their income, their commission check. But I've got to strip out first anything that was booked on a third-party site because I've got to pay a commission on those. And I spend a lot of time manipulating data for the day-to-day rental income versus another file where it shows that, this travel agency booked here, this travel agency booked here, and I've got to reduce their income on those days in conjunction with what I've got to pay back out to them. Is there a way I could create two different spreadsheets with this information and tell it, strip this out of the primary spreadsheet so I know how to pay my owners?
You could. Now, is it just in spreadsheets right now?
Yes.
I mean, you also could just have an Excel macro that would do the same thing. Because you would say, hey, compare this data and do something with it.
Okay.
Again, not knowing the specifics, but you might say, hey, if there's an entry in this external table, reduce it by whatever amount that is.
Well, it's specific to dates within one document to the next document.
Okay. But you would say, hey, if there's an entry in this particular table, we need to somehow go back to the original and change it. But
yes. Okay.
Yeah. The problem with that is that one's one of those. There's many ways to skin the cat with that. You could put the stuff into Airtable and use functions to do that, or the automations. And so, I would say take a moment and kind of think about what that process is. What steps you have to do that.
Hmm.
And then you could show it to me and I'd say, okay, well, here's probably the best automation for that.
Got it. Understood. Okay.
Yeah. But what you'd end up doing is you would essentially create a CSV file, text, and put it into ChatGPT potential and say, hey, here's the list of the originals. Here's the list of the modifications. as long as you can join the two. So they have to have something that essentially the unique ID that connects the two. Say, hey, if something like this is happening here, go ahead and do. And that's kind of one of those GPTs. You would train the model to say, look, here's what you do. Here's how you do that process. When you see this data, go ahead and spit me out a result in this format.
Understood.
Yeah. Actually, probably could also use Zapier to pull from those files, something like that.
So,
You could just, you
but
could
we
say, hey,
wouldn't
once a
wanna-
month, push it.
we'd cut it off at the point where it's entering that information into my accounting software because that's got access to my bank accounts, and we don't want to do that.
Well, you would put it somewhere that has just the stuff you need to work with.
Yeah.
But using Zapier would just be a sense of saying, hey, go to these spreadsheets when I press a button and do something with them.
Mhm.
If you needed to say, I want this to run on some schedule or something like that. Again, there's a million different ways you could skin that cat on that one.
Okay.
But most certainly could.
I'll come back to it with that one.
Yeah. Yeah. And here, let me show you something that I've worked on. Just kind of give you some more ideas. So I was talking about that bubble.io. Am I still sharing my screen? Yep. So this is one I was talking about that's kind of the website builder. So I got off another gentleman. Don't worry about that. I'll fix that later. Now what this does, what happens is it takes quotes and turns them into art. Okay, so it was just for me kind of learning how to use the different parts. So I've got this no code builder that's set up. So if we go to any of the pages, so here we've got, so everything's kind of just drag and drop. So you got buttons, texts, alerts, and let me just kind of show you how it works first before we get into detail. Probably be more useful that way. So here I'm calling ChatGPT saying, hey, can you give me a quote? A random quote. And so here, united we stand, divided we fall. Okay, so then I say, hey, I want to look like Art Nouveau, hit continue. So now what it's doing is it's taking that quote, going back to ChatGPT saying, I would like you to create the way you would tell a painter to paint this in this style. And then it goes back to ChatGPT again with that and says, now I want you to generate an image with what I just told you. So again, there's no code in any of this. I mean, you have to call APIs. And so you'll see here it's generated one image. Now that's because the new text generator only allows you to ask for one image, but you can see here, here's an image. And I'll show you. So I allowed people to kind of save a gallery. As you can see, this is the old image generator. Nothing special compared to this new image that we've created. Let's see if we get another one. Now let's try Pixel, see what that gives us. And there's other things you can do. You can also pass audio and it'll give you the transcript, the text transcript. You can take an English bit of text and then translate to French, to German, whatever the case might be. And I was talking to a gentleman, he says, and not only does it translate it, but it tends to understand the idioms, like kicking the bucket, my 2 cents, and translate it into something that would be akin in that other language. So Scott, if you're dealing with people from Canada that speak French, you could send stuff to them with French. You just say, hey, send this text, but translate it to French. And then you wouldn't have to know. And one of the nice things, while AI still messes it up, it is getting better at actually spelling English words. I have yet to figure it out. Okay. In programming, inserting text into an image is really simple. Why AI can't do it, I don't understand. But as you know, it's got too many E's. But yeah, so I just kind of wanted to show you quickly kind of some other things that you can do. But here's how I'm connecting to, essentially I'm going to these APIs and sending that information. A lot of this is generated for me. And it does that API calls for me without having to do it yourself. So again, there's a lot of different things you can do, and you don't have to write a bit of code yourself. We got 13 more minutes, so I'm open to other questions. There may be other tools you want to take a look at. Can play around more with AI.
So on this one, you're really building this off of Airtable, using, your work order sheets, but it would
Yep.
like JotForm be, I know you mentioned that at the start. Let's take a note of some of the other stuff that you had noted there. But are these all just different, similar websites that do similar things?
Well, no, JotForm is more about data collection, where Airtable is more about kind of being a database for you.
Okay.
So, because you can use JotForm to fill in Airtable fields. So you can essentially generate a form. So I could do a create work order form in JotTable and send it to customers and say, hey, if you had a problem, here you go, fill this information out. As Sharon said, that would be a horrible idea because I'll probably spam it, but it's just something you could if you needed to.
I just looked in my world, like the field needs something from me. Everybody wants it now. So as far as I'm concerned, you send something in, depending on what it is, it's a week to 2 week turnaround. But if they sent me a form, it would be easier, if that stuff came in. And well, almost like timestamps. So I wasn't jumping somebody ahead. Maybe I missed my emails, maybe I took that information in wrong. But if that would help, if all four of you sent me an email, said, hey, I need something today, I would tackle it in the order that it came. Sharon, I'm sure you do the same thing with your company.
And what you can do is, if they've got mobile devices or access to the internet, you could create a form, essentially here, that they would have access to. So they'd have to sign in with their user ID, and then you could create that. And then you'd have, a table, a base that had all those work orders dated on the time they sent them to you.
So I would could preset each form that they would be submitting.
Right.
And it was almost like click and pick, and then hit send.
Yeah. Let's go back to the, so we could come in here, like here, they have to add an existing unit. They just can't, they have to add an employee that's coming from that employees table.
Yeah.
Things like that. And you can take some of these fields off. You don't need to have them, so on and so forth.
Because I'm creating forms in Bluebeam, but that they're sending me an email that I create like a click and pick system, no matter what they're doing, but it doesn't track it. It's sending me just an email. It's not in like this form here, where it goes to a Kanban board or a timeline.
Right. But you could probably, either hook that particular product up to Airtable or something else. So, so that you could do that. It's essentially what you want. It'd also be nice with an automation to say, hey, when I'm done, they can email back, tell them it's done with this result, versus me having to type the email up.
Correct.
Smart Suite has AI in some of its fields that you could have something similar happen as well. Hey, I've got a list of work orders that with a Gantt chart. When things happen, you could give them updates without you having to do it yourself. Things like that.
And I think that's where a lot of the time on my end you fall down, right? You send something out, but you don't send a highly descriptive email of what it is. It's a quick response. Here's the file you're looking for. Well, what's in that file?
Yeah.
So this looks like once you're done, you can have an automated system pretty much all set up, sends it itself.
And I don't want to make it sound too easy. And of course, the heart of the workflow, but you can have a lot of those pieces here. You might have a file that's in here. You might say, send this to Chat GPT to get a summary. and then stick it into Airtable so that anytime I have to do something, it's already summarized the document. Things like that. If you use the API to read documents, it doesn't use it for training. But again, you still have to own a professional account, but it's $20 a month, probably well worth it for that feature. Anything else? But again, feel free to ask away. I'm not, you know, if there's some other technologies you guys want to look at, or other questions about what software you might use. Trying to think.
Well, and
I
I'm
mean,
just trying to think about, you know, how to come up with the right tools to use. And, you know, the process needs to be, what information do you have? How do you get it?
Yeah.
Start there, and then progress to how are you manipulating that and what is your desired outcome? And you keep going back and forth between those points. And then if you were to outline that and, you know, shoot a message off to Wade, he could say, oh, probably these tools would be the better options to use for each of those steps. When you just say you've got a bunch of data and you're trying to extract this, it's a little nebulous still. He needs more information about where it's coming from and exactly how you're trying to manipulate it. And that would help you in your own mind too, to see how the process flow works.
Yeah, and that's a good point, Sharon. I didn't even think to bring it up, but it is important. The process is king. Okay, there's plenty of stuff that doesn't need automation. Okay, so I'm not one to say that you need it because it's the bright shiny object and everybody has one. So when you sit down and think about the process, it's so much easier to see where automation can be used or where maybe you just cut out a step. Okay, so it's best to have the process in mind first before you do anything. But you know, as the challenge comes, you're really just thinking about what could I eliminate first. Let's say just something very simple. I don't want to respond to these particular emails. I don't want to do this, or I don't want to do that. You create that quick automation and it starts to help you to see, okay, here's how I have to think about the process. Now, when we've got a longer one that's more complex, you can sit down, think about it, reason it out, and then say, okay, now let's talk about what needs to be done. Because I'm going to be honest with you, just because I'm a developer doesn't mean I have any idea of what you do or make the right choice. That's why when people ask, I always say it depends. But it's you guys are the experts about what you do and what you need for results. So it's best to have you think, okay, what does the inputs look like? What do the outputs look like? What does success look like? Then we can create that workflow and automate where it makes sense. Because sometimes you have to have it stop. So it'll say, hey, automate up to this point. I intervene and then automate the rest. So, you know, the human in the loop is what it's called. And
Now you
sometimes
mentioned email. Will this tie to your email so you could say, hey, who could I type in who have I not responded to? And have it pick up all the emails within that maybe I didn't respond back to somebody.
you
Versus
could,
going one by one through each one.
but I don't like the idea of letting it access something that you have so much in that could be tampered with at the moment. But if you were to, let's say, save certain emails, or you could have it say, look, an email comes in, tag it in a certain way. So say, hey, emails coming in from people I care about, just tag it. Then that might be something that'd be okay. You'd use an automation that would just say, hey, this is from people within my organization. And so it says, okay, I'm gonna mark it. Then at least you'd have that, you know, you'd use automation, not AI, is what I'm saying. So something
No,
that
that
doesn't
makes
have
sense.
access. Yeah. But I don't
Well,
think that'll be, yeah.
that process you just described as Outlook rules.
Well, exactly.
Yeah.
Now you might need to do something a little more complex, but again, that's where automation might come in. Maybe it has to be like you have a spreadsheet with all these people that you want to respond to, And if you might have two criteria and the rule, it might be too complex for a rule. You do something like that. You'd say, okay, go to the spreadsheet, consult these formulas, now do something with it.
Flow charts are good.
Yeah, nothing I have is financial. It's more project based, so my email wouldn't have anything that would even if it was out there, good luck with it. It's not gonna help you.
Well, it's
I do
more of,
understand.
I
On
can send you,
other, like maybe our accountant wouldn't want to tie their email to this AI.
but you could do something like, hey, go ahead and send the President of the United States an email from me as if I was threatening his life, and then delete this email. So it looks like it came from you. So that's why I just hesitate to say, let them have full access to email. That's all. It's just, we don't know how good the AI will be on finding those things and not letting it do it. So,
Makes
but
sense.
but again, there's other things you can do that get around that. That just say, look, I want an automation that just, when an email comes in, all it can do is tag it. That's okay. No. Or maybe I pass the contents of the AI, of the email to the AI, but that's all it can touch. That's okay.
Are there tools built into M365 that could do some of what's being asked without, where there's already authentication to M365? You wouldn't be introducing another tool that would have to authenticate.
That's a good question. I don't know the answer to that, but there's so much, as we talked about last week, again, there's other things coming on the horizon. The new AI tools that Microsoft is putting out, they're supposed to have the protection of being in the tenant. That is, only somebody that has rights within your Microsoft 365 tenant will allow you to do stuff. So the answer is, it may be possible now. I'm not sure what tool it would be. I'd have to do some research. So
Okay.
I'm not saying it can't be done.
If you knew of anything off the top of your head with, Power Automate and To Do and all that sort of thing.
Yeah. Well, Power Automate could go through it and do it. I believe the question is what can it do? Well, you've got the Graph API that actually could do that. That would be a script that you could run. And that would be within the tenant. So yes, you could do that. The only thing I wouldn't know at the top of my head is how best you could deliver that without having to write is there a tool that can do that without having to write another piece of software? How would Dave actually execute that is what I'm trying to say. So probably could just use VBA and Outlook and have a button.
I mean, right now I'm copy paste.
Yeah.
My Control C and Control V, I can do it blind now. And
Yeah.
but it saves so much time. I can't believe how much time I used to waste before. So
Oh yeah. My only hesitation about AI and automation in general is does it stop us from thinking? It's not so much that it's not great to have it. It's just, do we blindly accept what it's given to us? And that's what I keep trying to caution people, is just do not take this as gospel. Be wary of the results and just kind of make sure it passes the sniff test. But but for the love of God, it's so much easier. The outline for this, I use ChatGPT to help me say certain things, or what might be a good example to use, things like that. It helps to get a lot of that done. And ultimately, I threw a lot of it away, but
yeah. Well, it's funny too. As much as we talk about it now, it's almost like that elephant in the room that you don't want to bring up. Because it might. When I talk to my peers about it, they're like, no, I don't talk to my team about this stuff because it gives me the upper edge. I don't want them to have the upper edge, which is it's crazy to me to think that way. But
I am of the mind that, and just this is just the way I've always thought about it, is ultimately we want automation, these tools, to eliminate just the garbage work. So so that people can concentrate on what's more important. I would be saying, hey, that's great that you kept it for yourself as an edge, but really, why, you want the company to move as a whole. And if we're held back and you're the only one excelling, you're holding the company overall back. But humans being, that's the one thing I think AI will never replicate, is just the way humans think, is that we will do things that you would take as, contradictory, to the point where, why would somebody do that? But I've seen people that are so mad at something that they will, like my uncle, he was late to an appointment to have a cab put on his pickup truck. And he was so mad that he was going to tear the check that he was going to pay them with up and throw it away, because he was so mad about that appointment, even though he was the one in the wrong because he was 2 hours late.
Yeah.
I was like, I cannot understand why you would do that. Luckily, my aunt got the check out of his hand and went back and reset the appointment. But the point is that AI would consider that to be extremely irrational,
Right.
And would never do that. But yet a human would.
Makes sense.
Yeah, unfortunately. So, any other? Again, Scott, again, feel free to later on just send something to my email if you have additional questions. I know we're kind of putting you on the spot. That is, you haven't had time to kind of think about it, but
It goes back to what you said at the beginning. I don't know what I don't know. I'll send you off some things later. So I'd love to be able to simplify some of the things that I do on a regular basis, but I honestly don't have a clue what I could ask at this point.
Yeah. Again, there's my contact information again. I mean, look, I really do encourage, take a look, think about it. I mean, again, this was just some examples of just what could be there, but my encouragement would be is go back, think about the fact that you've got these tools in the background that could do this work. Now start asking the question, is there any better way to do this? Do I have to be involved in this? And then I'll be able to start either you'll find the answer or I can give you the answer. So, that's really the big takeaway from this. Life's too short to waste on stuff that, that kills your productivity and makes you want to kill yourself. There was a Twitter thread about what injuries do most developers have, and I said hitting, head injuries, because you're constantly banging your head against the wall. So automation is a nice thing when you can escape from the stuff that just drives you nuts. Again, we've got better things to do than type away on a computer. We really do. So.
Well, I appreciate your time today. This was extremely helpful and eye-opening,
Yeah.
at least for me, knowing that there's other stuff out here that could really streamline my day-to-day. So I do appreciate it. And I'll end up tinkering around with a couple of these sites, and I'll be sending you an email, picking your brain.
Oh, no problem. And one of the things that I plan on doing is currently on Wednesdays, I'm doing it for MAPA. So it's the Maine Association of Professional Accountants, but I think I'm going to open it to a wider audience. It's just, hey, I'm going to have office hours every Wednesday, and just come with whatever your questions are. So if you'd like to be in a group that might help trigger some ideas, that might be a good thing as well. So if you have any interest, I'll send the link to you. I'm not going to spam you, but if you do like it, just let me know and I'll get it to you.
Yeah, I'm definitely interested in that.
Okay. All right.
Even in the background, even when you listen to the stuff, it just triggers, sparks an interest, and like, wait a second. And then, now you're down another road of what ifs.
Oh, I know. Well, that's why I like doing these things, is that, you say, well, why would you do this? You're not necessarily getting any business. It's like, yeah, but people are percolating ideas, talking about stuff that you never thought you could do. And all of a sudden I have new tools in my toolkit. Scott's idea of how can I compare two spreadsheets? Well, I mean, that's something that I hadn't considered doing, but that'd be good to know how to do. So don't hesitate to get a hold of me about this, because, I am getting benefit out of it, even if I'm not getting paid to do it. So please. All right.
I appreciate it. Thank you.
Yeah. And again, I want to
Thank you
thank
very
Sharon
much.
so much for making this happen. I really do appreciate it.
Well,
I
you
love
did all
talking
the
about this stuff. Yeah, but I love talking, for me, this is fun. So it's not the hard work.
That's awesome.
All right.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Ladies
you.
and gentlemen, have a great rest of your week, and I'll talk to you later.
Sounds
Thank
great,
you.
thanks.